Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, April 30th. I'm your host, Tom Moore. The Akron game in 123 days, the game against Michigan in 214 days. We're heading into what is typically one of the slower times in the college football calendar, but there is still plenty of stuff going on the recruiting front. We're going to be talking about that with our buddy Marc Givler of BuckeyeHuddle.com. He just spent part of the weekend up at the Under Armour camp up in Canton and got to talk to a bunch of really top Midwestern prospects. And there's some recruiting news and perhaps some recruiting drama happening involving Ohio State and their old friends up in Ann Arbor, and specifically their old friend, Tony Alford. So we're going to be talking about that today. Mark, I know people look at titles of these shows and sometimes and think, oh, it's just being clickbaity, whatever. So I'm just going to read the title of the show to you in the form of a question, and you can answer yes or no. Mark, are Tony Alford and Michigan about to pull a top running back prospect out of Ohio?
Yes, they are. I really believe they are. Cleveland Heights running back Marquise Davis has a few officials set up for June. Michigan, Tennessee, Kentucky, I think Florida. It's going to be a Michigan-Kentucky battle, and I think Michigan's out in front right now, and I think it's going to take a lot to overcome that for other schools. But I guess the real news there is Marquise told me that Ohio State's out. And so Ohio State obviously has prioritized Bo Jackson in state as well, and they've also prioritized Jordan Davis in out of state. So I think we're going to see a lot of focus turn to some other targets. And it sounds like completely out of the running now for Marquise Davis based on his relationship with Tony Alford. He told me that was really the only guy at Ohio State he was talking to. So that's kind of a deal breaker there, and did not have a relationship with Carlos Locklyn going back to his time at Oregon. So pretty clean split here, I think.
All right. And, Carlos Locklyn did have a very good relationship with Jordan Davis, and I want to get to him in a little bit, but you also got a chance to see Bo Jackson in person and talk to Bo Jackson over the weekend, in addition to talking to Marquise Davis. What did you hear from Bo Jackson? Is Ohio State still in the running there? Where do things stand with him in terms of the 2025 running back recruiting class?
Yeah, I've had Bo in my unofficial mock class here for a really long time. He's still there for me. I think he's going to sign with Ohio State ultimately and possibly commit there this summer. I think he's going to get this thing over with probably before his senior season kicks off. He's got officials coming up in June as well. He told me this week he's going to announce those, so he hasn't released those, doesn't want those out. What I would say is I feel very strongly Ohio State's going to have one of those. I feel very strongly that Alabama's going to have one of those. Alabama has actually pushed quite a bit since Kalen DeBoer took over for Nick Saban, and I think that's maybe the one school that's trying to shake things up here for Ohio State, but I still really like where Ohio State's at. I grew up an Ohio State fan. I think Marquise Davis being out of the picture helps to an extent. I was never convinced that those two were going to end up at the same school. And it just feels like they were always going to get Jackson, and then they were probably not going to get Davis. But now that we know they're not getting Davis, I think things become a bit more simple with Jackson. So I had a great visit there this spring, met with all the coaches, has a great relationship with Ryan Day, which has helped, and also had a previous relationship with Carlos Locklyn, which has helped as well. So everything's moving in a good direction there.
Now, you put this information on the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse at BuckeyeHuddle.com, which is our members-only board. Don't worry, we'll get to that later. But you put that on the board over the weekend, and I saw some people say, well, Davis is Michigan and Kentucky, Jackson is Ohio State and Alabama. So is that a function of how those guys are perceived, that one is Alabama's the competitor and the other Kentucky's the competitor? Or is that just comfort in relationships like we talk about in terms of recruiting all the time?
Well, I think a lot of it is relationships. I mean, there's no question Marquise Davis has a good relationship with Tony Alford at Michigan. There's no question Marquise Davis has a good relationship with the coaching staff at Kentucky. And, Vince Morrow's kind of their ace Ohio recruiter, and they've done some good things with Ohio running backs over the years. So I think there's a natural fit there. But I do think that, obviously, I think Bo Jackson's got the bigger national offer list. I think he's got more national options, but I do think a lot of it is, though, going back to relationships that Marquise Davis has.
All right, so now let's look at the rest of the 2025 recruiting class at running back. Those were two guys who were obviously, Ohio State was in on a bunch of guys nationally, locally, and it was kind of, okay, they can't take 6 guys in this class. So when is this list going to get narrowed down? What is the target number for Ohio State at running back for the 2025 cycle? Are they looking for 2? Are they looking for 3? And who is still left as a real viable option there? And, can they get to whatever their target number is without having to kind of reach for someone?
Yeah, I think 2 is the reasonable number right now. Is there a scenario where they would take 3? I think Ohio State would entertain it. I think that becomes a issue, though, of, okay, you get your first 2 guys that you really like. Are we risking pushing one of those 2 away to, Bo Jackson or, even if it's Jordan Davison? Are you going to risk pushing a talent like that out of the class to take a 3rd guy? And wouldn't it just be a little better maybe to go portal this upcoming offseason, this next offseason, and maybe add a veteran guy to the room to space things out a little bit better? So I think the number's probably going to be 2. And I think they would love it to be Bo Jackson and Jordan Davison. And right now I have them firmly in the lead for Jackson. And I think they're actually they're still in a pretty good spot with Davison. I got a little spooked there when Tony Alford left, but they were able to replace Alford with a guy that Davison basically had a similar relationship with. And that visit went really well. He made it. It was a little rocky there for a few weeks, but he made the visit. He stayed for a couple days. Everything went well. I think they can still get him. So I think that's kind of the focus right now. I mean, they've offered some other guys. I think those are more contingency plans at the moment. And I still think this is a Bo Jackson, Jordan Davison focus here until one of them seems to be slipping away, and that isn't the case yet.
I did want to ask you about those Tony Alford leaves, Carlos Locklyn comes in kind of dynamics, because it does feel like that has been really the big overarching storyline for this recruiting class, especially in this one position group. How much did the Tony Alford departure really set them back? Now that we've had a little bit of time to look back and sort of reflect on, did it really swing momentum with certain guys that he left? And how much did Carlos Locklyn coming in maybe swing some of that momentum back, or has it not had that much of an impact?
Yeah, I mean, so I think it clearly had an impact on Marquise Davis, a negative impact for Ohio State on Marquise Davis. And I think in the immediate aftermath of what happened, I think initially Jordan Davison kind of got spooked, freaked out a little bit. But as soon as it was made clear that Locklyn was going to be the guy, that got Jordan Davison right back in the fold. So it's been a little bit of a roller coaster, but at the end of the day, if you look back 6 months ago, I said I thought Jordan Davison and Bo Jackson would be the 2 running backs in the class, and here we are 6 months later after everything that's happened, and I still think Jordan Davison and Bo Jackson could be the running backs in the class. So in the long-term, long-game sense, it really hasn't disrupted things from where I sit, but it did have there were a bit of a roller coaster, bumpy ride to get to where we are.
Well, there will certainly be more ups and downs on the recruiting roller coaster between now and signing day in December. We'll be following all of those for you at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And Marc was up, as I mentioned, at that Ohio Under Armour camp over the weekend and got a ton of great content. That is all sitting right now on the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse. The piece of that is the running back recruiting piece. That is just a small portion of what he got for you over the weekend. We always say we give you, some stuff on these shows, but you got to go to the board, you got to go to the site to get the full information. Well, good news. If you've thought, I wonder what they really do have, I wonder how much more they do have. Let me just tell you, good stuff on a top 100 defender for 2025, an elite cornerback in 2026, a current commit who has made a big leap since he first committed to Ohio State, much, much more. That's all just part of Marc's reporting just from this weekend on the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. If you want to give it a try, you want to try out becoming a member, great news. Our spring annual subscription sale going on right now, about 40% off for a membership, an annual membership, $69.99. That's a pretty nice deal. We hope we can see you there. And we've got a bunch of great content from Tony and Kevin. We've got the Southern Swing coming up, their big annual recruiting trip across the South. Going to be talking to a ton of the nation's very best football players. That's only at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We hope to see you there. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.